Yeah, there's been a big tech internet coup, and that's why your traffic and reach suck. A funny thing happened on my way through the COVID era. Even as people left and right were suffering unspeakable financial hardship, interest in my energy healing technique went through the roof. Granted, folks everywhere were suddenly a lot more focused, for good reason, on health and wellness, and they had considerably more time to thoughtfully read and consider my books and other materials on the subject. But the uptick in my bottom line was such a dramatic hockey stick, I was simply shocked. And then another funny thing happened on my way out of the COVID era. My work flatlined. Seemingly overnight, traffic across all my platforms began falling. For over 2 years, I tried everything I could think of to reach numbers again with my empowering DIY message that we're capable of healing ourselves. Despite being more than a little reticent, I exited my hermit's cave and became more active across social media. I blogged more. I created more videos. I appeared on more podcasts. I did more interviews. This was high-level content I was sharing, if I do say so myself. Nevertheless, my uncanny sense of living in a solipsistic echo chamber, unable to reach, much less communicate with other human beings, only ballooned. My book sales dwindled. My mailing list shrank. Publication of new books and content, a tried and true strategy for increasing visibility, had only a passing effect. My dream of growing my Substack to a respectable paid membership base slowly turned into a pipe dream. Bottom line, people just didn't seem to care about my work as much as they used to. Or so I thought. I took it personally, I really did, and engaged in all manner of wallowing in self-pity and fear and loathing. But unlike some fair-weather creators, I was also stubborn. I was determined to figure out what mysterious force or forces had set fire to my traffic stream, and if there was anything I could do to remedy the situation. Here's what I eventually painstakingly learned. It took me over a year of research to put all the pieces together, but if you stick with me just a couple more minutes, you may just find some missing pieces to your own success puzzle. The pandemic wasn't simply about establishing social control over our bodies and physical movements. Nor was it just a psyop to turn people against each other through the oldest trick in the psychopathic leadership playbook: divide and conquer. Yes, of course it was about these things, but COVID was also, and perhaps most perniciously, about destroying people's dangerous, to the status quo, ability to connect and organize with each other, not physically or politically, but on the internet. In order to achieve this goal, they, whoever they are, a subject for another time, implemented 5 interconnected strategies via big tech to literally change the functional architecture of the internet. Perhaps the motives were purely financial, greed-based, and certainly big tech, along with, I'd argue, those who secretly own and control it, has grown immeasurably wealthy over the last few years. Still, my instinct tells me there was a more fundamental rationale than money for using COVID as a smokescreen for an online coup: acquisition of more power. In order to stuff their bank accounts and become far more powerful and dangerous than nation-states in the process, they utilized their stooges in big tech to do 5 things. First, starting with Facebook, now Meta, platforms began to severely restrict users' ability to reach their own hard-earned followers. Call it shadow banning or what you will. But the bottom line is that starting just before COVID, suddenly you could post all you wanted, but fewer and fewer of your own followers would even know you were alive. Second, Google in particular began to degrade the effectiveness of SEO, or search engine optimization, a trend that has reached a virtual apotheosis here in 2024, with an overwhelming consensus that discoverability for small businesses and individual voices is now an urban myth. Maybe you'll get lucky and go viral somewhere, and maybe you'll also win the lottery while you're at it. What this scenario means for practical purposes is that when you search today using any of the major engines, all you can find, at least on the lead pages, reads like a Fortune 500 menu of the same old corporatized mind rot so many of us cultural creatives thought we were over and done with years ago. Third, with SEO, including a related waste of time, keywords, fast becoming a relic of an earlier internet, and the search engines having been rigged in favor of big tech, big pharma, big business, etc. They continued their coup of cyberspace by making most of it pay-to-play. Want to reach customers? Forget sharing content with your followers or optimizing your materials with SEO. Now you have to pay the man. In other words, run ads. If this seems like a catch-22, that's only because you're not at the top of the food chain. The system works perfectly well for the apex predators. One problem with ads is that they're hard to run when you're idea-rich but cash-poor. To add insult to injury, some ad venues, notably Amazon, only work well for already established voices. Thus, the rich, as usual, get richer. This is, in my humble opinion, all part of the plan. And no, we're not all in this together. Another issue is that the new online ad interfaces, such as Meta Instagram, seem to have been purposely designed to be as complicated and frustrating as possible, and they keep changing all the time like a magical labyrinth. Could this be because the apex predators want to make it so that only they can afford to hire ad managers to make their campaigns actually work, adding yet another layer of rigging to an already game system? Fortunately, even an indie writer or musician with limited tech skills can make ads work, and work well on a budget, an uplifting subject to which I'll return in future posts about my latest adventures in guerrilla marketing. Fifth and finally, beginning with communist China's own Trojan horse, TikTok, the last few years have seen the metastasis of algorithm-based models for content curation across the majority of mainstream platforms. This means that on most of today's internet, you, the user, no longer get to decide what content you consume. Since you're not one of the apex predators, your feed is, you guessed it, fed to you. Translated, you're not using, you're being used. Welcome to Animal Farm. The algorithmic model would be the nail in the coffin of free thinking if things stayed this way. Fortunately, the times, as Dylan sang, they are a-changin'. Jack Conte, co-founder of Patreon, has arrived at many similar conclusions relative to the internet coup I've been outlining. In a recent talk, The Death of the Follower and the Future of Creativity on the Web, Conte had this to say: "I'm worried that the 2020s could become the death of the follower. I got an email from a creator about a year and a half ago and my heart just sank in my stomach. Hey Jack, I'm writing this letter to you hat in hand due to changes at Facebook. Overnight, the traffic to my links in my pages dropped by 80%. As such, it looks like I'll have to sell my home. I'm dusting off my resume and looking for jobs in social media management. I'm seeing more and more things like this, and it's not just happening to creators. It's happening to anyone who posts stuff on the internet. It's happening to media companies Vice and BuzzFeed and Rooster Teeth's announcements. This is a really hard change to navigate for anyone who's posting stuff online and trying to build community and business. I think it's really important to remember that, and to understand that if you're not connecting as much as you want to with your audience right now, that does not necessarily mean there's something wrong with you. A lot of us as creators have this tendency to be like, what can I do better? And that's a good impulse. Honestly, it's like a growth mindset. But there is also something happening in the background right now. It's a macro thing that's happening on the web that makes our jobs as creators really hard right now. There are a lot of smart people at big companies that are well-funded big media companies trying to figure this out too. And they're having trouble with it too. So as creators, just know that doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with you. I believe that this problem is the single most important problem that faces creative people today. The weakening of creator communities, our distribution channels to our fans. This is the hardest, most challenging, and most painful issue threatening the present and the future of creativity on the internet. Ultimately, Conte sees the present moment as a reorganization of the internet that, from a creator's perspective, favors the growth of small membership communities of fans and followers like Patreon and Substack. In other words, while the cyber landscape may look bleak right now and artificially skewed in favor of all things big, a sea change is occurring among internet creators that prioritizes many things small, and that sea change is the restorative reconnection between creators and followers, not on the macro, but on the micro level. You're part of this change right here, right now, just by listening to these words. Thanks for being an agent of change, even if you feel small right now. But rest assured, big things are coming. Start your free trial today, Luckman, Substack.com.